are being joined today by John Rush, who owns CleanTurn. John Rush is a Marine Corps veteran and social entrepreneur. Over the last 20 years, John has provided supportive employment for over 5,000 men and women who have spent time in jail or prison and/or are in recovery from alcohol and or drugs. Over the last 3 years, John has started 3 companies here in Columbus focused on fair chance employment. He'll be sharing with us his experiences with CleanTurn, 180 Demo, and Third Way Cafe, illustrating what is meant by fair chance employment and why it's so important for businesses and our community. So I'd like to have everyone give John a warm Rotary welcome. John?
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks everybody for the warm welcome, and thanks for the opportunity to share today. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good, great, thank you. Also joining me today in my office is Thomas. Thomas works with us over at CleanTurn, which is one of the social enterprise ventures that we'll be highlighting today. And so I'll probably talk for just a few minutes, maybe like 10. I see the schedule here, maybe leave a little bit more room for questions just in case folks have questions given the size of the group, because there are questions, I'm sure, and I'd rather spend some time answering questions than talking a whole lot. So as Amanda mentioned, we're a little unique as an organization. We started our company, the first company, CleanTurn, here in Columbus for the sole purpose of providing supportive employment for individuals who've had some significant obstacles in their past, primarily former incarceration or drug or alcohol abuse. Or some other traumatic experience. And typically there's a lot of overlap on all of those things that kind of were listed. They're usually not things that happen in isolation from one another. And so we recognized that the population that we were looking to provide supportive employment to were a population of individuals that most companies are risk averse and would probably pass over. And so the opportunity for supportive employment is very difficult. For me, the work personally started many years ago when I left the Marine Corps and moved to Chicago. I grew up as a young boy in Appalachia, West Virginia, in a trailer park. I knew what people might call white redneck, white trash trailer park poverty looked like, but I did not know what the west side of Chicago, K-Town, poverty looked like. And so being the only white couple, my wife and I, in the neighborhood on the west side of Chicago, it was a great learning experience to kind of get some exposure to the differences between Appalachia poverty and urban poverty, and also the similarities, frankly. And so the volunteering work at a homeless shelter opened my eyes to the need that folks had to find employment. The work I was doing was faith-based, and so I was exposed to a lot of organizations that spent a lot of time talking about a particular faith, but I found that there was kind of a gap between some of those conversations and actually equipping people to find employment, and not just employment, but a career. And helping folks then kind of plug into that career. And so that's what got my mind spinning a little bit about maybe starting a company. First company was a little painting company. It failed. I often tell folks it failed miserably. And the tip of the iceberg was when I was sitting in grad school and got a text that said the poodle ran through the paint tray. And this was in a large, gigantic, super nice, meticulously clean house in Naperville, Illinois. Naperville makes every suburb of Columbus look a little depressed. It's just an exaggerated way of saying that that's not the house you want the poodle to run through the paint tray in. And so I said, I think we're done. But the idea of creating a company that was intentional about providing supportive employment for individuals who've had some challenges in their past kind of was planted there. And since that time, I've had the opportunity to put that into practice in partnership with the nonprofit community, and also most recently with CleanTurn and 180 Demo, in partnership with the nonprofit community here in Columbus. In Chicago, my experience with the companies that we started was a little unique. Our companies there were owned by nonprofit organizations. And so even though they were for-profit companies, the managing members were 501c3s. Here we had some philanthropic investors who had some disposable income who said, hey, look, rather than give money away, we would like to take some of our disposable income and invest it in a for-profit model where the return could be reinvested back into the company to help it scale and maximize its impact. But at the same time, it wouldn't come back asking us for more money a year or two down the road. And so the idea was to create a company, an organization, an entity that would allow their initial gift to become a gift that gives in perpetuity and maximize its impact. And so the 7 other investors that invested in 2011, roughly it was a small amount of money, about $300,000 to get us up and running. 4 of those investors doubled their initial investment after 3 years and transitioned out so they could take their resources and invest them elsewhere in other philanthropic ventures. And the others are still on board. And so there's 5 of us that own the company now. The reason why there's 5 is because our director of finance, who's now our president at CleanTurn, also became an owner earlier this year. We gifted some ownership to him. And so initially, when we launched, we had 8 business lines. We've scaled that back dramatically over the last 8 years. We have 1 business line at CleanTurn now, which is really nice. We are a commercial cleaning company, and we're very specific with our targeted market, and that's positioning us well to look at scaling outside of the Columbus market into other major cities, and that is something we're super excited about. We've impacted here in Columbus close to 1,000 individuals' lives in terms of supportive employment. About 40% of the folks we've hired are either still with us or moved on to other opportunities in the marketplace. And then over the last year, we transitioned the demolition portion of CleanTurn into its own separate company for many reasons. One, to get focus at CleanTurn, but also to get focus at the new company, 180 Demo, which partners with about 50 contractors here in town, primarily commercial contractors, to provide demolition services, selective interior demolition services. And we use that company as a platform for individuals that are looking to get into the trades. It's kind of a springboard into the trades. And so we work with the Department of Corrections to identify individuals who are looking to get into the trades. And then once they exit, provide them an opportunity at 180 Demo to kind of get their feet wet, kind of prove themselves, and then launch into an electrical or plumbing or carpentry or some other trade of their choice. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. Part of the supportive services model includes, 1, identifying management. All of our team leads, all of our supervisors are individuals that we've hired within the company. And so a lot of those folks are folks that understand because they've been through it. They've either been in prison or they're in recovery. And so they understand the dynamics that are involved, but also looking to hire folks on the management team who not only get how to run a business and how to see a business move forward, but also get that social mission piece of what we're all about. And sometimes it's hard to find individuals who get both. It's easy to find folks that get one or the other, but to find folks who kind of get both is extremely important. And so that's step 1 in creating the culture at CleanTurn and 180, the culture of accountability, culture of trust, a family environment where folks know that they're welcomed and supported, where there's a sensitivity to triggers in the workplace, a drug and alcohol-free workplace policy that takes into consideration opportunities for folks when they do relapse to get the support and help they need, even though they may be put on probation for a short time and not able to work, a place where they know they're going to be held accountable, where there's a zero tolerance for relapse, but also support and help simultaneous to that. Case management, financial literacy training, health and wellness training, and other support services that we have in place to provide a lot of coaching and mentoring for our team members is extremely important and a part of our model as well. We really like to talk a lot about how we're in the business of changing perceptions and shattering the myth that a person's past dictates their future. We believe that a person's past informs their present reality, but it doesn't dictate who they are or who they're going to be tomorrow. none of us should be defined by our worst choice or our worst choices. And all of us have been given many opportunities, more than perhaps we might oftentimes realize, to move forward. And so that's the environment we look to create here. So that's a summary. I'd love to hear questions you might have around fair chance employment or our supportive services model, or if you have a need for disinfecting or cleaning at your office space before you go back to the office. Of course, we'd love to hear about that, because we're here and ready to provide the help that you need.
All right. I have a question.
Oh, sorry, I have one too. Go ahead, Rick.
Who provides all the support training that you mentioned? I mean, that's very, very impressive. You must partner with some folks, but I don't want to guess. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Over time, it's become more in-house as we've grown. We recognized with our particular model how early on we would not be able to do as much as we're able to do now. And we also recognize that we're not able to do as much now as what we'll look to be doing 10 years down the road when we hit our 10-year target, and we're in 20 different cities generating 50 million in revenue with the same margins that we have now, right? And so, but where we're at now as an organization, we're able to do a whole lot more. So a lot of that training we do in-house. And so our management team, our director of finance, for example, he does the financial literacy training. And so even though there's financial institutions, it's been fascinating. Like some of the financial institutions that we've partnered with, they get how to address financial literacy needs in kind of a traditional middle class environment, but working specifically with our population there, sometimes the pedagogy is not quite there to make the connections that's necessary. And so it's neat because our staff, our management team, they do get it. And our financial director, for example, who's now our president, but he does that financial literacy training component. And we also are very intentional about doing it in-house because we're able to tie it into incentives and follow up in-house. And so whether it's gym membership reimbursement or some other incentive to encourage folks to follow through with what they're learning in the class, that's important for us. There are some things, health and wellness, for example, we partner with Lower Lights, which is one of our neighboring organizations. They come in and help facilitate that class. And so some of the electives that we offer are classes that are taught by folks that are partners in the community that come and teach those classes. But really the classes is about 20% of it. It's really about the life on life. It's kind of like an old school apprenticeship where you learn not just a particular trade, but in a lot of ways where you learn the values that are necessary for moving forward in any career that are transferable. Things like time management, conflict management, team building, maintaining a positive attitude at work, those types of things that you can talk about in a classroom, but when where it really takes root is in that day-to-day kind of 1 minute management, coaching, mentoring relationship that our team members really focus hard on. And so it's kind of, but to answer your question, it's kind of a combination between external partners and, but mostly at this point, we do most of that in-house. We recently actually just promoted Melissa on our team. She was in Thomas's role, helping with business development. She's been with us for about 3 or 4 years now, and she's now our director of staff development and training. And that's her primary focus, is developing out and building what we have already started, but are looking to enhance over the next couple of years.
Thanks, John. We got another question from Ken Ackerman. Need to unmute Ken.
Yes, Mr. Rush, I wondered whether you offer advisory services or coaching for a company that wants to use second chance employees for the first time and wants some guidance in the procedure.
That's a great question. I do get that question quite often these days, I as personally I do, but not for pay. I just I believe in this 100% and am more than willing to talk to anyone that is interested in incorporating this into their organization. And it would be a different conversation with a smaller company than a larger company industries also kind of set the stage for the nature of how that conversation will look. And so there's a lot of variables. So the initial part of those conversations would be me learning about that respective company. The short answer is yes, I'm always glad to help and give some pointers and ideas. I would encourage folks because, and this is, as a kind of a follow-up to that, to think long and hard, because it is more than just simply banning the box type approach to employment. I mean, that's important. Expungement's important. Those types of things are extremely important. And like I said, a person's past does not dictate their future, but it certainly informs who they are. Nobody would bring anybody on a team, for example, a basketball team, without having some type of scouting report that kind of gives us an indication of how well they're going to do. But even maybe more importantly, how we might be able to better coach them so that they can succeed and move forward, right? And so, oftentimes in our broader culture, we're so placement-based driven. For example, the nonprofit workforce development organizations are heavily funded by grants to help people get placed into jobs. Companies are heavily incentivized at a federal level through the work opportunity tax credit to hire individuals who have challenging backgrounds. Banning the box incentivizes companies to not ask that question on an application, which is important because it unnecessarily perhaps sometimes filters people out, but it also allows folks to easily avoid the difficult conversations that are necessary for helping a person move forward. And so we're very placement based. We're not retention based. We're not career oriented. And so a lot of that conversation is, how do you create a supportive environment for fair chance employment to blossom and not simply become a company that's open to hiring folks who've had challenging backgrounds? And so it's a great question, and anything I can do to help any of you that are business owners or part of a team or whatnot that's interested in moving this direction, I'd be glad to help.
Thanks, Ken. Dana Vogelmeyer and then John Stewart.
Yes, good afternoon. I heard you speak one time about your unique benefits plan where they have like $600 to use in a way that will help them move forward, separate from things that traditional companies have, like a 401k. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and our programming has changes every year as we kind of go through our 10-year target, our 3-year picture, and our kind of 1-year plan. It's kind of the model we use. And each company has done it differently too. So for example, in Chicago, one of the things that we did that we found very helpful with the parent nonprofit that owned our company, individuals would use the business as a transitional job portal. And so folks would go through some life skills training at our parent nonprofit, and then from there would go into a transitional job at the company. And then individuals would get placed. We worked with about, I don't know, Chicago was probably a good 500 employment partners that hired from our transitional job pool. And so when people got placed, one of the things that we did is we would incentivize individuals to follow through with a savings account by setting up the account first and then matching every month $100 of their initial investment with $100 from our own funds, so that by the end of the year, and that was the key, they had to do that for a year, their $1,200 would become $2,400, which would oftentimes help people move from kind of temporary housing into something more established, right? And so those types of incentives are extremely important. And I should say too, as I'm thinking about this, like one of the other things that I get often asked is a wage question. And it's fascinating to me. I mean, I know we're very much in a bumper sticker culture where everything needs to be kind of solved in 2 or 3 words on a bumper. But the challenge of most of these issues is it's a lot more complicated than that. And it's the same thing with wage. The emphasis on a living wage, for example, is oftentimes still just as much centered on the wage as folks who are anti-living wage, or at least trying to figure out how to make it work. There's very little emphasis on the living component. And I've found over the years, the last 20 years in this work, that oftentimes a higher wage is counterproductive to a person's progress, especially when they're in recovery and money can be a trigger to relapse, especially when the financial literacy is so lacking that it wouldn't matter if they're making $100 an hour. It's not going to work. And so there's a component to living wage that's more than just the actual wage that the person is making. It's also about the amount of dollars that you're going to invest in that individual to help equip them, train them to do well with the wage that they're making. It's important that they have money so they can provide for themselves and things of that nature. But it's a long way of answering, and I'm kind of rambling on your question, but it's a very good question, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. But for us, we really emphasize, look, we're gonna compensate you, and that's important, but we also are more than just about a paycheck and more than just you doing your job. It's important you do your job and do it well, that you clean. We're the best cleaning company in Columbus. We really believe that, and we get a lot of compliments from people like Debbie Pinzone. We clean all the Pinzone salons. I don't know if any of you go to a Pinzone salon or your spouses do, but they're clean, and they're clean because our team cleans them. We clean all kinds of places like that throughout Columbus. A great cleaning company, and we're changing perceptions by being that. But when we pay our staff, what I would say decently well, but more importantly, it's a family environment where we are not just interested in you doing a great job and us paying you and you get a paycheck. We want you to grow personally and professionally. Megan comes to mind. Megan stayed with us for 3.5 years. She came in about 6 months ago with a cake, and on the cake it said, "I quit." And that's exactly what we wanted her to do. Not because we wanted her to go. We hated to see her go. She's an example of many folks. And she wanted to be a vet tech when she started here. So we worked with her while she got her vet tech license at Columbus State. And now she's in Grandview working for a veterinarian. And 6 years ago, she would have been on the West Side, walking the streets, supporting her heroin addiction. Single mom, 4 kids. And now she's working as a vet tech in Grandview, right? And so she used the cleaning business, amazing, took care of one of our Ohio Health contracts that we have, amazing cleaner, great worker, but her passion was to be a vet tech, and that's where we wanted to kind of see, we wanted to be a support for her as she moved in that direction.
Good, thanks, John. John Stewart?
I'm not sure where I'm going with this question. It's just a personal thing for me. We were always leasing the facilities we're at, so we didn't choose any cleaning people. But I noticed a lot of the people that came in, they seem to have a connection with an immigrant population. Great people. One was from Ghana, and then another crew came in, El Salvador. Vilma tried to teach me Spanish all the time. But just what is are you familiar with that kind of situation? Is there any impact on the immigrant community? Have you even noticed that, or you're moving in different circles?
We haven't seen a lot of that. It's a great question. But yeah, we haven't had a lot of overlap yet. I mean, part of that is, I think, as we continue to grow and scale, I think we'll probably start to see more of that. And I should say too, like, we're not exclusively, we don't exclusively hire folks who've had challenging backgrounds. I'd say it's probably 80% of our staff, maybe a little bit higher than that, but we're open to hiring and working with individuals who may have other obstacles or challenges in moving forward in a career that are unique and different from folks that have spent some time incarcerated. And I love the language fair chance too, I should say too, because a lot of times a second chance or second opportunity for a lot of folks, and this is really eye-opening for me. I remember Sandra in Chicago, we used to do what we called morning motivations, where we'd stand up in a circle and we'd talk about a particular motivation topic for the day. And on this particular day, it was, tell us about a goal that you've set for yourself and how are you going to achieve it. And she stood up with one of those cardboard books that you read to your 3-year-old. And it basically said, "The cat sat on the hat." She pulled this out and she's like, "You know what? I never learned how to read. From the time that I was 3 until I was 7 or 8, my mom would take me out of the closet and she would use me to make money by providing me as basically a sex object for somebody to come and just do whatever they want. She'd make money to support her crack addiction. Department of Family Services came in, took her out of that. She went to foster care. First foster home she was in, she was sexually abused. Second foster home as a teenager, she was abused. So she ended up leaving, running the streets as a teenager, became a drug addict herself. And then we met her when she was probably in her mid-20s, and never learned how to read. for Sandra, and there's a lot of stories like that. I don't know if I'd ever say that there was really a legit first chance. I think we were the first chance, the first opportunity, but she took it and she ran with it.
Sure.
So seeing a lot of those cases over the years, I'm really glad that some of the language is moving away from first, second, third, fourth chance to fair chance. And so,
John, there's a question here from George Kuhn. He asked, are you expanding beyond the central Ohio areas such as Akron? Are you offering services in Akron at this point?
yeah, that's a great question. I know Thomas is all excited about Akron. He's a big LeBron fan, so he's like, "Hey, let's go," And so, I kind of liked Jimmy Butler this year, but it was kind of fun.
Well, one of them ended with a ring, one of them didn't. That's fine.
But yeah, the short answer is, so we plan to have a second shop up on the northeast side of Columbus in 2021, mid-year next year, and in 2022, our plan is to be in a third location. It's kind of like the hockey stick model. I think we're getting close to the end of that bottom part of the hockey stick before we're looking to kind of see it really take off. But we see the first couple of shops in Ohio, and so Akron is one of those cities that we're looking at. Cleveland, and of course Cincinnati, and Dayton. So, but yeah, the short answer is yeah, we definitely are wanting to move in that direction. Just want to make sure we do it right.
Very good. Don DePiro, then Bill Wayhoff.
John, your old buddy, how are you? Good to see you.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Stories, and every time I hear you, there's another amazing story. I was just thinking of you because we sat together at our clam bake a year ago, and hopefully we'll be able to sit together. Maybe you could share the actual percentage of candidates, re-entry candidates, who you actually hire, because it's low, and it's a tribute to the arduous application process and how you interview folks, and it's rigorous, and also your retention rate after a year or so, and what you do along the way.
Yeah, great questions, and ever evolving. I mean, I think it's been interesting this year to see the impact of COVID on some of those metrics. And not just COVID, but also the impact of some of the unemployment laws. And I think this is talking to other folks that are kind of in the service industry and other industries that aren't entirely different than ours. They've had some of the same challenges, but the application process, when I think about the Chicago experience and the Columbus experience, and I kind of look at the whole picture, out of every 10 candidates that we will meet with or interview, there will be roughly 10% that will actually kind of make it onto the team, sometimes 20, and folks that are not quite ready. For example, we had a fellow come in on the 180 demo side this past week. He did a great job. He came from a referral source, one of our great workforce development organizations here in town. Came, interviewed great, awesome, ready to hit a home run. Then it came time for the drug test, and he's like, and this is after probably 3 interviews, and because we always let folks know you're going to get drug tested. It's just prerequisite, right? If you're in recovery, that's step number 1, is staying clean and sober. And so he said, wouldn't pass because I probably test positive some opioids. I need to go kind of get my. So we're like, well, get your prescription, come in, bring a copy of it. Let's sit down and talk. And unfortunately, he didn't come back. And that's not uncommon, right? And so, and for us, there's nothing we can do for that individual other than say, hey, continue to work with your nonprofit that you're working with, continue to pursue your sobriety. But we don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to do anything other than to make another cross referral or to encourage that person to keep going forward. And so the selection process is huge. And the reason why is because we are a professional cleaning company. We're a professional demolition contractor. We provide professional services, and we're in the business of changing perceptions. And if you're not ready to do that, this is just not the right bus to be on. It's just not going to work. And so we need you to be on board with that. And everybody here wants you on board with that, because everybody here has created that opportunity for you to come here and interview in the first place. And so now I'll say this too. The other thing that's been fascinating, I'll say this real quick. Over the years, I've noticed 90% plus retention rates for people who have served more than 20 years in prison for crimes that typically, and in many cases, are more prohibitive to be, how do I say this, are more complicated, more tragic. It's the folks that are serving smaller sentences for drug-related crimes because of their addiction that are oftentimes retention rates are super low. It's a revolving door. And they do say statistically that, folks have to relapse 7 or 8 times before they finally hit rock bottom if they don't die and they're still alive and they stay clean and sober for a longer period of time. So you don't know if you're getting somebody on their 3rd or 4th or 5th, go at it when you're hiring folks. But that's why a drug and alcohol-free workplace is extremely important. Folks make it, retention improves. It kind of goes without saying. Folks make it to 30 days, it improves 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year. The further a person gets into their sobriety, especially, the stronger the retention. But folks that we've hired that have been in prison for 20 plus years, I'll hire, I don't care what's on, and I should also say this, what's on paper. Because the way the judicial system's set up, if you plea out because you don't have the resources to pay for an attorney, what's on paper may not necessarily be the best reflection of what in fact happened, but that's what you're stuck with. And instead of serving life, you'll serve 30 years, but at least it's only 30 years and not life. But those cases are the loyalist, hardest working, committed individuals that I've ever ran across. When I was in the Marine Corps, I served with a lot of great guys. So
Thanks for the question, Don. Hey, we've got a couple more we can take. John Mariotti and then Sally, and we're gonna have to wrap it up. John, you're muted. John Mariotti, you're muted, buddy.
Having had experience a long time ago in my career with hiring people who had previously been incarcerated, I didn't do a study, but I noticed that there's a more than incidental connection as to whether they also had substance abuse problems at any point in time, because the ones who didn't have serious addiction problems, their incarceration was often circumstantial as opposed to biological or physiological, or even the environment they're in. I just wonder if you can draw any conclusions about, because recidivism among addicts is much higher than it is probably among people who have been in prison. That's just my observation.
yes, yeah, it's 100% accurate and shows the need for folks that are in recovery to be able to access the resources that are necessary for them to continue on their path of recovery. But yes, that's certainly true. It also, in a lot of, it's a great observation. And yes, I've seen the same thing. I have a fellow that I've been writing in prison, which, by the way, an easy way for any of you to get plugged in, especially if you have a little exposure. Like, here's just a handful of letters that I have of folks that I'm writing in prison. And one of the fellows, Jamal, locked up when he was 19, kind of a circumstantial situation. Just saw the parole board this summer after serving 26 years in prison, with the hopes that he might be able to get out. I wrote the parole board, said, hey, look, you let him out the day that he gets out, he's working for me. No, period. And we'd exchanged a couple of letters. He'd served some time with one of the guys that's on our team. I have complete confidence he's ready to move forward after 26 years of being locked up with the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I think he's been corrected and rehabilitated, if we'd like to go that direction. Well, the parole board saw him. The parole board said, hey, you're doing great. You're doing everything you're supposed to be doing. You just keep doing that for the next 10 years and come back and see us. And so he'll get to see the parole board in 10 more years from now. while we wait. You know, it's those types of situations where it's like, yikes. And we're spending as taxpayers about 30 grand per year for the next 10 years to keep him there. And so it's quite the investment that we're making as a broader society. My argument is, look, let's give him an opportunity. I think 26 years has certainly been long enough. Let's allow him to be a tax contributor, and so move from liability to asset. And I think he's ready to hit the ground running. So I talked to the Department of Corrections. I'm supposed to have a conversation with the parole board here in a couple of weeks to just remind them who we are and what we're doing, and see if we can look at his case a little bit closer. But it's I think, anyways, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There was one more question. I want to make sure that person gets the opportunity to squeeze it in.
If you're muted.
Sally, go ahead. Sally, you're muted.
Are you now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, you can. Yay. You're doing fabulous work. This is so exciting for me to hear, because I'm working with the Peace Committee in Rotary with what is considered the worst school in the Columbus system in Linden, a very, very poor school, all kids on free lunch. We've just raised money to provide them with school supplies. Many of these kids have parents in the penal system. And I was wondering if you would ever somebody could come and talk to the 6th graders to give them some hope for the future, to give them maybe a reference to help their family when some of these parents get, released from prison. I just would love to see support on the early part, was what we're doing in the elementary grades, and relate it to some support as they get older. Do you ever talk to school kids?
I do. Yes, that's a great question. And so are some of our staff. And so I think it seems like to me, like oftentimes it's more effective when our team members are able to go out and share their stories and share that hope and opportunity. But short answer, I'd be glad to help, and we'd be glad to be a part of that. I was just encouraged. I think I saw, when I was watching some football with one of my kids or something, I think I saw our local Channel 4. I think one of their newest anchors is from Linden. His name is escaping my mind, but I saw, I think, a brief commercial, and I was like, oh, that's super awesome. He'd be another fellow to tap into to say, hey, because he grew up in that neighborhood. One of our first partners actually is Linden based. When I was recruited to come here from Chicago, one of the nonprofits we worked with is a tiny nonprofit there on Cleveland Avenue. It's called Crack House Ministries. It's a faith-based nonprofit called Crack House Ministries. And I always tell people, if you volunteer at the Crack House, you better be clear on where you're at. It stands for Christ Resurrects After Crack Kills. But the fellow that leads that is a really neat guy. But at any rate, yeah, it's a great community. Our first office was actually in North Linden.
Right.
When we go back northeast, we'll be up there probably around Morrison, Cleveland. But yeah, I'd love to be a part of talking to the kiddos.
That'd be great. I mean, I think that I don't know, there's so many stories I can't even start, but they need to take something home to their families that's encouraging. Yeah. And these kids don't have food at home. That's why they like to come to school. And it's a sad situation. So we are really in Rotary on the Peace Committee, trying to make it better, provide a washer and dryer at the school for parents to come and get their clothes clean, just basics like that.
Yeah. Yep, it's a great question. I saw somebody ask a question about transportation. We purposefully located our current operations here in Franklinton, about 2 blocks from the Broad Street bus, and so close to downtown. And once folks get here, everybody starts here in the mornings, or if they work a PM shift, they start here in the evenings. They're assigned to a team. Everybody's uniformed, and they're in a company vehicle that's GPS tracked, and so we know where our vehicles are at all times. They're clearly marked, and folks travel in teams of 2 or 3, sometimes 4, depending on where they're going. And then at night, if they get back here, typically we provide transportation to wherever they live or to wherever they're staying. And so because we know the buses don't run at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning if they're working PM shifts, so we help provide transportation in the evenings.
John, it's been great. This CleanTurn program's wonderful social enterprise, impacting a lot of lives. And maybe there's an opportunity for our club to work with you. I think there's all sorts of intertwining, as Sally was alluding to. So we wish you the continued success and look forward to having some further conversations.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks all of you for letting us have the opportunity to share today. Really appreciate it.
Everybody have a great week. We are adjourned.